May 1945, Austria. When the iron hatch of the M4 Sherman tank opened, 15,000 prisoners froze in place. They had never seen a black person in their lives. What had the Nazi guards told them? These are Untermensch, subhumans. Now this subhuman was their only hope and salvation. His name was Floyd Dade, and this is the story America tried to erase from history for 33 years. The first thing that hit Staff Sergeant Floyd Dade's lungs wasn't the smell of death. It was worse. That final stage of the human body before it begins to decay. The smell of a living corpse. When his eyes scanned the inside of Gunskirchen camp, he froze. 15,000 skeletons were staring at him. But these weren't corpses like the ones he'd seen in battle. These were still alive and breathing. Comment below with where you're watching from. We're building a global archive of witnesses to these forgotten stories. Floyd Dade was a 22-year-old kid from Texas. For 2 years, he had learned to drive a tank under the shadow of Jim Crow laws beneath colored-only signs. Then he fought for 183 days straight at the front of Patton's Third Army without a single break. He lost half his friends at the Battle of the Bulge. He punched through Nazi Germany's Siegfried Line. But he wasn't ready for this. Nothing could prepare you for this. The agonizing sounds rising from inside the camp didn't sound human at first. A scream, a whisper, a plea, all at once. Then he noticed. They were coming toward him. With nothing left but bones in their bodies, they were crawling toward his tank with their last strength. And Floyd realized something in that moment. These people had never seen a black person like him in their entire lives. Nazi propaganda had called them Untermensch, meaning subhuman. And now, this subhuman had come to save their lives. But the truly shocking thing was something else. When Floyd returned home, if he could return, he would still have to sit in the back of the bus. While liberating Nazi prisoners, he couldn't touch his own freedom. This was history's strangest contradiction, and Floyd Dade was right in the middle of it. Floyd Dade's story began in 1923, in the red soil of Texas. He was the child of a poor, destitute family working in cotton fields. His hands were calloused from hard labor by the time he was 10. Every morning before dawn, when he touched the hot soil of the fields just to survive, he knew that land could never be his. But his eyes were different. Floyd's eyes were always searching the horizon. His father had noticed this. "Son, you don't belong to this land," he said one evening. "You're going to do something bigger." Floyd's dream was simple but powerful. One day, he would open his own little repair shop. Engine sounds, the smell of machine oil, and most importantly, being his own boss. Without having to say, "Yes, sir," to anyone, without being treated like a second-class human, without seeing anyone's colored entrance sign. But when Pearl Harbor was bombed in 1941, that dream was put on hold. When he went to the enlistment office, the white clerk looked him up and down, dismissively. "You sure about this, boy?" Floyd smiled. That smile was the kind Texas taught you for survival. He knew how to hide the rage inside, how to protect his dignity, and how to show that he never, ever backed down. "Yes, sir. I'm sure." In April 1942, Floyd Dade was sent to Camp Claiborne in Louisiana, 761st Tank Battalion. The 1st Tank Battalion made up entirely of proud, strong black soldiers. 6 white officers, 30 black officers, 676 black enlisted men. This was an experiment. The Army was testing whether black soldiers could actually fight. Floyd and his friends knew this, of course. Every training exercise was an exam. Every success was an answer to racist doubts. They completed all exams and training at twice the rate of whites. Black soldiers were achieving high success in every field, just like everywhere else. But here was the real painful point. White tank units were sent to Europe after 2 to 3 months of training. Whites going on vacation while Floyd's unit? They trained for 2 years. For 2 years, they said, they're not ready yet. Special Forces soldiers trained for 2 years anyway back then. How could a tank unit not be ready? They were scared, of course. For 2 years, Floyd and his friends sweated inside M4 Sherman tanks. For a full 2 years, in the scorching Texas heat, inside that metal box filled with steel, it was a complete furnace. Sweat would drip down their faces, burning their eyes, but they never complained, because they had no room for error. The smallest mistake would send them back to the land of poverty and hunger. If a white soldier made a mistake, they'd call him a rookie. If a black soldier made a mistake, they'd say, "See, we told you so." This logic sounds familiar even now, doesn't it? Their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Bates, was different. Despite being a white officer, he believed in his men. Just like in reality, he would say, "I always believe you'll do your best, because you have no other choice." And that's exactly what they did. In October 1944, when the phone rang, Patton had gone crazy. The Battle of the Bulge was heating up, and General George Patton needed tanks now. "Send me your best tank battalion," he shouted into the phone. "I don't care what color they are, but I want the best." And the 761st got the call. When Patton first spoke to them, he said his famous words, "Everyone has their eyes on you. Your race is looking at you. Don't let them down trying to prove yourselves. And God damn it, don't let me down." Floyd felt something in that moment. Pride? Anger? Both. What was he supposed to prove? Who started this discrimination? Why did he have to represent his race? Why did he have to prove his worth in a white man's eyes? Think about how painful this was. Just to fight, before even fighting, he had to prove his own worth. October 10th, 1944, Omaha Beach. When Floyd climbed out of his tank, he stepped onto French soil. But this wasn't a moment of victory. Just 2 weeks earlier, thousands of soldiers had died here. The sand still reeked of blood. November 7th, 1944. First combat. The town of Morville-le-Vicq. Pulling the trigger for the first time. Killing another human being for the first time. These moments are impossible to describe. But what stayed in Floyd's mind was something else. After the battle ended, white infantry soldiers came and shook their hands. "If it weren't for you, we'd be dead," they said. On the front lines, they were equals, but only on the front lines. In civilian life, subhuman. Most tank units would stay on the front line for a week or two, then pull back to rest. But the 761st, they never pulled back. They fought for 183 days without a single break. They proved themselves. Floyd lost half his friends at the Battle of the Bulge. Anyone else would have lost their mind. In the freezing cold of those Ardennes forests, the metal inside the tank got so cold that if you touched it, it would take your skin off. When they punched through the Siegfried Line, German prisoners asked in astonishment, "How many Negro Panzer divisions are there?" They were just one, but they became legends. But Floyd's real fear wasn't dying in battle. He had already seen death, shaken its hand. His real fear was going home. He couldn't go back to that poverty and hunger because he knew, here in Germany, he was a hero. But in Texas, he would enter through the colored entrance door again. He would sit in the back of the bus again. He would be addressed as boy again. He was fighting for freedom, but he didn't have his own freedom. And that's why, when he opened the gates of Gunskirchen camp in May 1945, the deep contradiction inside him reached its peak. He was there to rescue victims of another racist regime. Could they understand this paradox? March 1945. The western bank of the Rhine River. Floyd Dade's Sherman tank was waiting by the water's edge. On the other side was Germany, the real Germany, the heart of Nazi Germany. In the cramped space inside the tank, 4 men sat side by side. The driver, the gunner, the loader, and Floyd as tank commander on top. He felt the cold of the tank throughout his entire body. The tank smelled of kerosene, gasoline, gunpowder, and sweat. He had memorized this smell so well that he knew it better than the smell of food at home. "Sarge," said the young soldier beside him, Willie. 19 years old and from Alabama. His voice was trembling. "When we cross over, what do you think will happen?" Floyd looked into Willie's eyes. He wanted to say something comforting, something hopeful, but he didn't lie. This was one-sided only. "When we cross over, Willie, we're going to be the nightmare in our enemy's dreams." And that's exactly what happened. When they crossed the Rhine, the first German town was Coburg. The streets were silent. That deathly silence, the kind before an explosion. Then white flags started appearing, the symbol of surrender. From windows, from doors, from rooftops. German soldiers were coming out to surrender, but Floyd and his crew kept the tank hatches closed because they had learned in the previous town, when German prisoners saw a black soldier climb out of the tank, they would try to flee in panic, as if they'd seen a monster. Nazi propaganda had sunk so deep that they preferred death to being captured by people they had degraded as Untermensch. He slowly opened the tank hatch, and Floyd quietly stepped out. A German officer was waiting with his hands in the air, waiting desperately. When his eyes saw Floyd, they widened. His skin went pale white. His mouth hung open. Wie viele Negerpanzer? He stammered. How many Negro tanks? Floyd answered in English, slowly, emphasizing every word, enough to kick your ass all the way to Berlin. When the interpreter translated, the German officer's legs trembled with fear. It was in that moment Floyd noticed something. This man, this Nazi officer, was afraid when he saw him. Afraid of him, Floyd Dade, of that kid who grew up in the cotton fields of Texas. If only he knew the compassion, the love, the kindness inside black people, he would never think that way. But this didn't give Floyd a feeling of victory. Instead, he felt a strange pain inside. Because at home, in Texas, a white man would never fear him, only look down on him. But here, even the enemy found him dangerous. Which world was more painful? But the real shock would come 3 days later. In a town, something different would happen. The strangest, most painful thing Floyd had ever seen in his life. But before telling that, we need to read one line from the little notebook Floyd kept in those days. "Today I took 47 German soldiers prisoner. They were all trembling with fear of me, but I'm only afraid of going home. May 4th, 1945, 0600 a.m. The order from the radio was short and clear. Support the 71st Infantry. Coordinates, Gunskirchen, Austria. Intelligence report. There's a camp in the area. Details unclear." Floyd and the tank crew set off. The Austrian countryside at that hour of May was almost poetic. Green hills, morning sun, bird song. It was hard to believe war was so close. Nature seemed not to care about mankind's madness. But mankind was distributing death just to survive. But as they continued down the road, something changed. First came the smell. Willie sniffed. "Sarge, this What is this? Floyd knew this smell, the smell of dead bodies. But this was different, more intense, more sharp, more alive. Something must be burning, said Willie. But nothing was burning. Then they saw the first body, by the roadside. A man, a skeleton. No, wait. He was still breathing. His eyes were open. He tried to move when he saw the tank, but couldn't. Floyd stopped the tank, climbed down, approached the man. Help. Bitte? Help? The man whispered. German and English mixed together. Floyd took out his water bottle, touched it to the man's lips. The man drank like an animal, then coughed. Tears streamed from his eyes. Danke, danke. What happened to you? Floyd asked. The man pointed down the road with his finger, pointing ahead. Lager, camp, death. Floyd got back in the tank. But something had changed. There was a weight in his chest. Breathing had become difficult. As they continued down the road, they saw more bodies, some dead, some still alive. But they all had the same thing, bone and skin, just bone and skin. He wanted to help all of them, but it wasn't possible. Sarge, said Willie, his voice cracking. These people, what happened to them? Floyd didn't answer, because he didn't know the answer. He had seen a lot in war, exploded bodies, burned corpses, shattered soldiers, fading lives and dreams. But this was something else. This was systematic. This was deliberately planned. This was a choice. When they reached the camp entrance, Floyd opened the Sherman's hatch, stepped out, and in that moment, he understood. This wasn't war. This was hell. But what he couldn't understand was the reaction of the people inside. When they saw him, they weren't afraid. They didn't run. No. They came toward him, crawling, walking, reaching out their hands, as if they could sense the love, the compassion, the mercy, as if he were a savior, as if a messiah. The gate of Gunskirchen concentration camp was open. The SS guards had fled, inflicting hell on wherever they entered and then fleeing, just like angels of death. 3 days ago, while escaping, they had tried to burn all the evidence but ran out of time. They left behind 15,000 poor, innocent people. No, is it right to call them 15,000 people? What Floyd saw was a situation too painful to describe. One step before death. The tank couldn't enter the camp. It was too susceptible to traps and sabotage and too narrow. Floyd and 2 of his friends entered on foot. On his first step, his foot hit something. He looked down. A child's body, maybe 8-9 years old. Eyes open, but gaze empty. Floyd's knees trembled. His eyes filled with tears. He had been fighting since he was 19. He had lost his tanks at the Battle of the Bulge. He had seen his friends torn apart. But stepping on a child's corpse, just imagine how painful that is. What if that innocent child had been our child? This was different. Oh God, oh my God, whispered the soldier beside him. As they stepped inside, the sound grew louder. First, it was like a whisper. Amerikaner, Amerikaner. Then louder. Americans, Americans. And then they saw them. They were coming out of the barracks. Hundreds, thousands. Bodies with nothing left but bones. Skulls covered with skin. Eyes sunken into sockets. Hands just bone. As if only one step from death. But they were moving, and they were coming toward Floyd. The first woman fell to her knees in front of Floyd.
put her hands on Floyd's boots, tried to kiss them as if begging for mercy and forgiveness. Floyd stepped back. He was very surprised.
"No, no, ma'am. Please don't." But the woman was crying. She was saying something in German. Floyd didn't understand, but could tell from her tone. Gratitude. Endless, bottomless gratitude. Then a man came. Maybe 40 years old, but whatever they'd put him through made him look 80. He touched Floyd's hand. His fingers were ice cold. "You are black," the man said in English, with astonishment. "Yes, sir," said Floyd. The man nodded. Tears streamed from his eyes. I never saw. We never saw." Floyd understood. These people had never seen a black person in their lives. And what had Nazi propaganda told them? Black people were subhuman. Jews were subhuman. Now, one subhuman was saving other subhumans. Have you ever felt this way? Or have you ever faced discrimination because you're black? I have. So many times I've lost count. What about you? Suddenly caught between two worlds. A hero in one place, invisible in your own country. That's exactly what Floyd was experiencing in that moment. And the pain in his heart was the kind German bullets couldn't cause. As he walked through the camp, Floyd tried to see everything, carving every detail into his memory. Maybe it would have been better not to look, but he had to look. He had to bear witness. In the barracks, 6 people lay in one bunk, but 3 were dead, 3 alive, and the living ones slept next to the dead because they didn't have the strength to separate them. Just think, even if you were healthy, you'd get sick. It was a miracle these people had survived. Outside, there was a pit filled with corpses, thousands of them, piled on top of each other. Floyd's stomach started to turn. He felt like he would vomit, but held it in. He had to hold it in, because there was something he needed to show these people. Hope. "Sarge," said Willie, "these poor innocent people, why are they here? What did they do wrong?" Floyd turned and looked. In Willie's eyes there was pure bewilderment. The bewilderment of a young boy still trying to understand the world. "Nothing," Floyd said. "Willie, they just existed in this world and had a different religion and race." Willie nodded. "Like us." "Like us," Floyd said quietly. And in that moment, Floyd Dade experienced history's deepest paradox. In Texas, he was a second-class citizen. But in war, he was the savior of thousands. Which was real? Which was the illusion? But deep inside the camp, in a barracks, a surprise that would change Floyd's life was waiting. A 17-year-old girl named Sonia. The look in that girl's eyes would follow Floyd for the rest of his life. Barracks number 7. When Floyd entered, the first thing he saw was darkness. The inside of the barracks got almost no light. There was only a small window, but it was so dirty that sunlight barely seeped through. When his eyes adjusted to the dark, he saw the bunks. 5 to 6 people in each bunk. But most weren't moving, because many of them were dead. "Hello," said Floyd. Can anyone hear me?" There was movement. In the right corner, on the bottom level of a bunk. Floyd slowly, nervously approached, and he saw her. A girl, maybe 16 to 17 years old. Her eyes were big and brown. Her face was nothing but a skull. Cheekbones jutting out, lips cracked, hair fallen out. But her eyes still had a light in them. The girl saw Floyd and froze. Floyd knelt down toward the girl.
got to eye level, tried to smile and comfort her. "Hey there," he said in a soft voice. "My name is Floyd. I'm here to help." The girl said nothing, just looked and looked and looked for a long time. Floyd was confused. Why wasn't she speaking? Maybe she didn't know English. Maybe she thought he would hurt her. "Deutsch?" he asked. "Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" The girl slowly shook her head. "No." "Polish?" Floyd didn't know, but wanted to try. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. "Yes." But she still wasn't speaking, just looking at Floyd, as if she were seeing a ghost. Floyd didn't understand. Other prisoners had been happy when they saw him, had cried, had thanked him. But this girl, she was just in fear and shock. Then the girl tried to wet her dry lips, took a breath, and forced out a whisper. "You are black." Floyd smiled. "Yes, I am. I never saw," the girl said. Her voice was hoarse. "I never saw a black before." And in that moment, Floyd understood. This girl had never seen a black person in her life. She had grown up in a small town in Poland. There were only white people around her. Then she was sent to Nazi camps. There, too, only white guards, white prisoners. And now, for the first time, she was seeing a person of a different color. And the black person she looked at with fear had brought her freedom. Floyd took out his water bottle. "Here," he said. "Drink. Slowly." The girl took the bottle, trembling, timidly brought it to her lips. When she took the first sip, she coughed. She had drunk too fast. Floyd gently took the bottle back. "Easy, easy," he said. "There's plenty. I promise." The girl looked into Floyd's eyes, and there was something in that look. A question, a disbelief, a hope. "You will set me free?" she whispered. Floyd's heart clenched. "Yes," he said. "You're already free. The guards are gone. You're safe now." Tears streamed from the girl's eyes. I thought you must be the Messiah." Floyd froze. Messiah, the Savior, the Redeemer. And in that moment, Floyd Dade, the child of Texas cotton fields, the black man who grew up under Jim Crow laws, realized something. He understood that someone had come to change the order. This girl was looking at him as if he really were a messenger of God. But Floyd knew. He was just a soldier, a man who was a second-class citizen in his own country, who had to sit in the back of the bus, who used colored restrooms. How did he come to look like a messiah, living such a contradiction? Can you imagine what kind of storm it stirs inside you? Floyd felt both the strongest and the weakest in that moment, and this feeling tore him apart from within. Commander Floyd stood up, called out to other soldiers. "We need medics here, now!" But the medics were in shock too, because there were hundreds of people inside the barracks, and all of them were on the edge of death, helplessly waiting for the angel of death. Floyd turned to the girl. "What's your name?" "Sonia," the girl said. "Sonia Schreiber." "Sonia," Floyd repeated. "You're gonna be okay. I promise." Sonia nodded, but she couldn't speak, because she didn't have the strength to speak. She just kept looking at Floyd, and Floyd never forgot that look. Years later, Sonia wrote that day as a poem. She called it The Black Messiah. In that poem, she said, poem image, Floyd had frozen too, because he had seen the darkest point of humanity. He had seen hell. And when he compared the pain in his own heart to the pain of these people, he didn't know what to do. Which was more painful, being second class in your own country, or waiting to die in a Nazi camp? Both were painful. Both were unjust. Both were inhuman. Floyd and the 761st stayed in Gunskirchen for only 6 hours. 6 hours, just 6 hours, for 15,000 people, because the order had come. Move on! The war isn't over. Advance! When Floyd heard this order, rage swelled inside him. We can't just leave them, he shouted to his commander. Orders are orders, Sergeant, the commander said. There was pain in his eyes too, but there was nothing to be done. The order came. They had to move on. During those 6 hours, Floyd and his crew tried to do whatever they could. They distributed food, but little by little. Because the medics had warned, too much food will kill them. Their stomachs can't handle it. Maybe nothing had entered their stomachs for months. Think about it. They're dying of hunger, but if you give them too much food, that kills them too. How painful. They gave water, brought blankets, tried to separate the sick, but everyone was sick. Typhus, dysentery, starvation, frostbite. 6 people sleeping in one bunk and at least 3 dead. It was a miracle they'd stayed healthy and survived. Floyd saw Sonia one more time. The girl was now wrapped in a blanket, had drunk some water. There was a little more life in her eyes. Thank you, Sonia said in English. Thank you, Messiah. Floyd smiled, but his eyes filled with tears. I'm not a Messiah, Sonia. I'm just Floyd. For me, Sonia said. You are Messiah. Floyd said nothing, because his throat had knotted up. Floyd saved 15,000 lives. But when he got home, he couldn't even drink from the same fountain. If this situation isn't degrading to honor and pride, I don't know what is. Write in the comments, do you think Floyd ever got the justice he deserved? Because I think the answer will surprise you. When it was time to get in his tank, Floyd looked back one more time. He thought, I wish I could save all of them. But he knew most wouldn't survive. Even if help came, most would die. It was too late. Their bodies had become too weak, both spiritually and physically. According to post-war figures, of the 15,000 survivors from Gunskirchen, 5,000 more died in just a few months. When Floyd heard this news years later, he wept uncontrollably. But that day, May 4th, 1945, as he was getting into his tank, Floyd noticed something. A Russian woman tanker was running toward him, a strong, sturdy woman. She came shouting, "America! America! America!" and hugged Floyd so tightly that it took his breath away. The Russian army had come from the other side. The war was about to end. But for Floyd, the real war was waiting for him when he got home. How could a man who was a hero here be nothing there? Floyd asked himself this question every night. That question that was the fate of black people was the same in the 1940s as it is now. And Floyd never found the answer either. Because some questions exist not to be answered, but to be asked. As the tank left the Austrian countryside, Floyd wrote one more line in his little notebook. Today we freed 15,000 people, but I'm still not free. I wonder, will we both ever be truly free someday? He had to leave the answer to history. Do you think a world, a country where we black people can live peacefully without being judged, without being looked down upon, is waiting for us someday? June 1st, 1946. The 761st Tank Battalion was officially disbanded in Germany.
Floyd Dade and the other surviving soldiers were given medals, bronze stars, purple hearts, silver stars, pieces of paper, metal discs, things pinned to their chests, but they all knew. The real gift was coming home safe and sound, staying alive. When the ship docked at New York Harbor, Floyd stood on deck. He saw the Statue of Liberty, that famous torch reaching toward the sky. "Give me freedom," the statue would say. Floyd had given freedom to 15,000 people. But who would give Floyd freedom? "Will you give me freedom?" Texas was exactly as he had left it. On his first day, Floyd got on a bus. His uniform was on. His medals were on his chest. He was a tanker who had fought 183 days straight, punched through the Siegfried Line, saved 15,000 people. The driver looked at him, looked him up and down, then pointed to the back with his thumb. "Back of the bus, boy." Floyd's hand became a fist. Everything he'd been through flashed before his eyes like a film reel. His heart raced. That familiar taste was in his mouth. Rage, poisonous and bitter. But he unclenched his fist, smiled, that Texas smile, and walked to the back of the bus. Looking out the window, he noticed something. The notebook in his hand was still with him. It had been with him since Gunskirchen. He opened to the last page. He had written, "Second-class citizen at home, first-class senior commander on the front lines." Which is real? Both. The following years were a blur for Floyd. He opened a repair shop. He made that old childhood dream come true. A small shop in the black neighborhood of the city. He repaired engines. His hands got calloused again, but this time in his own business. But the nights were hard. In his dreams, he saw Gunskirchen. Sonia's eyes, bodies turned to skeletons, the smell of death. He would wake up drenched in blood and sweat, and then, while drinking his morning coffee, he would hear the news on the radio. 761st Tank Battalion. Never heard of it. Were there black tank units in World War II? They hadn't been recorded in history. Censored, ignored, forgotten. Racism had struck again. The days he fought risking his life had been forgotten, overlooked. He freed 15,000 people, but they erased them from the pages of history. Why? Just because he was black. Because death is an end, but being forgotten is the denial of your existence. January 24th, 1978. Floyd Dade was 55 years old. His hair had grayed, his hands were wrinkled, but his eyes, still those Texas eyes, sharp and alert. The phone rang. From Washington. "Mr. Dade, President Carter wants to speak with you." Floyd almost dropped the phone from excitement. President Jimmy Carter was personally giving the 761st Tank Battalion the Presidential Unit Citation 33 years later, 33 years after the war. "Better late than never," said a white officer. But Floyd thought, 33 years. Half his friends were dead. Most had gone without seeing this day. Their stories lay silently in their graves as wounds inside them. On the ceremony day, Floyd put on his uniform. It was tight now, but he put it on anyway. He pinned on his medals, and as he stood at the podium, looking at the crowd, he noticed something. There, in the front row, an elderly woman was sitting. White hair, wrinkled face, but her eyes, familiar eyes. When the ceremony ended, the woman approached him. "Sergeant Dade?" the woman said, with an accented English. Floyd turned, looked, and recognized her. "Sonia," the woman smiled. An old, wrinkled smile, but the light of that young girl was still in her eyes. "My black messiah," said Sonia Whites. "I never forgot you." Floyd's eyes filled with tears. He couldn't speak. He just hugged her. Two old people, bound by the shared pain of history, just stood there like that. Sonia gave Floyd a poem called The Black Messiah. She had written it the day she was rescued, describing that day in Gunskirchen. Floyd remembered those days as he read the poem, and he wept, because he understood. What he saved wasn't just Sonia. What he saved was humanity's memory. He was history's witness. And Sonia wasn't just a rescued prisoner. She was a mirror that reminded Floyd of his own humanity, his own existence. Both had suffered, in different ways, but for the same reason: hatred, arrogance, prejudice. And both survived, not just to breathe, but to remember, to tell the story. But the story doesn't end here, because Floyd Dade's true legacy isn't what came out of that camp or the medal he received. The true legacy is whether we today remember our reason for existence. All humans are equal. Humans shouldn't suffer. Humans shouldn't die. Children should laugh. Why so much pain in such a short world? Floyd Dade died in 2001 at age 78. At his funeral, his old soldier friends were there. Willie, now an old man, said, "Sarge was the best commander I ever had." For Floyd. But then he added, "No, I said it wrong. He was the best person." The American flag was draped over his coffin, just like at white soldiers' funerals. But Floyd had said this in an interview years earlier. "They'll hand me my flag, but while I served that flag, the flag didn't serve me. Don't forget that." The story of the 761st Tank Battalion isn't just a war story. This is the story of Black people fighting a system, both against the Nazi system and against the Jim Crow system in their own country. 183 days of continuous combat, 50% casualty rate, 300 Purple Hearts, 11 Silver Stars, 1 Medal of Honor, and most importantly, 15,000 lives. But the real medal came 33 years later. The real honor, they were recognized years later, because America didn't want to see them. Black heroes didn't fit in white history books. And this is important. Pay close attention here. The story of Floyd Dade and the 761st isn't something left in the past. This story is still alive today. We still face the same problems today, because the questions haven't changed. Who is accepted as a hero? Whose story is told? Whose pain is seen? Floyd rescued the prisoners in Nazi camps, but he never fully found his own freedom. Sonia saw a messiah, but that messiah was nothing in his own home. This is the paradox. This double victory paradox still exists today, with different names, in different forms, in different cities, in different countries, but it still exists. I couldn't find the last lines in Floyd's notebook. They're lost. But a friend told me this. Before Floyd died, he looked into his grandson's eyes and said this: "Son, I fought 2 wars. One was in Germany, the other was in Texas. I won one, I lost one, but in both, I remained human. I never forgot my reason for existence. Don't forget that." And that's it. Remaining human. Even if the system wants to crush you, even if hatred wants to swallow you, Floyd Dade remained human. When power was in his hands, he didn't become cruel. He chose mercy. He chose goodness. The 761st Tank Battalion remained human. Sonia Whites remained human. And today, by telling their story, we protect their humanity too. Floyd Dade died in 2001. But if you watch this video to the end, he didn't die. He lives inside you, in your memory, in the rage you feel against injustice. Don't let them erase him again. We will continue to exist, because forgetting a hero is killing him a second time. And Floyd Dade doesn't deserve to die twice. If this story made you feel something, please leave a like on the video. We Black people will support each other, because people like Floyd are still waiting for their stories to be told. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You'll find World War II's forgotten heroes here, especially the untold stories of Black soldiers. And write this in the comments. What did you remember most from Floyd's story? Which moment touched you? Or has something like this ever happened to you? Because history only lives when it's remembered. And as long as you remember, Floyd Dade won't die. Floyd Dade, 761st Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers. They weren't forgotten. They won't be forgotten. They can't silence us Black people.